with a French name and are superb aerial acrobats. The female lays only one egg every 2 years, and both male and female go to almost unbelievable lengths to protect the egg and then the chick until it's ready to fledge. In mating or in hunting, these eagles perform astonishing aerial displays, which cameraman Simon Trevor has captured on film. Although they're common throughout most of Africa, Trevor found our eagles in Kenya's Tsavo National Park, where we made our film, Tumbler in the Sky. Battler eagles spend most of their lives balancing on the wind. The eagle was first described in 1800 by a Frenchman who called it battleur, meaning tumbler. Though often seen on the wing throughout Africa, its habits have long remained a mystery until this film was made. This small hill in Kenya's Tsavo National Park stands within the territories of many different animals, including the battler eagle. Each species exploits the resources of a distinct niche, and all help maintain the essential ecological balance of the environment. Battlers live a long time. This pair may have been nesting here on this hill for 30 years. As the breeding season approaches, intruders arrive. The white back of this male battler is uncommon and distinguishes it from the resident male whose territory it would like to take over. The female stays while her mate works hard to gain height. He must attack the other male from above. The intruder opens the attack while he still has the advantage. Diving at a speed of almost 90 miles an hour, the white-backed intruder attacks again. Once the resident male has the necessary height, he counterattacks. At this point, the female decides to support her mate. Her attacks are more powerful and persistent. The whiteback cannot win. With the resident male holding the dominant position, the only escape for the intruder lies through the trees. That route is not without hazard. The drongo has a territory too. He attacks dangerous intruders with great daring. With the resident battler still circling above, the intruder has no option but to put up with the drongo. Defeated, he slips away. This time, our male lets him escape. The female rejoins her mate in their territorial airspace. Their excited display is a prelude to courtship. Though battlers are believed to mate for life, they breed only once every 2 years. Each time, the essential close contact has to be re-established. The courtship ritual begins with preening, triggered by hormonal changes that predetermine each stage of the breeding cycle. Their last chick is still in their territory. It will not acquire adult plumage until it's 7 years old. Battler courtship is a leisurely affair that lasts several weeks, gradually drawing the birds closer together, reaffirming their pair bond. Their chick is fully independent, but it sees no reason to leave home. The birds preen each other for 2 hours each morning. As courtship proceeds, the female is increasingly disturbed by the continued presence of her last chick. The chick is about to get the shock of its life, for the female is ready to move on to the next stage of the ritual. The chick is totally at home in the air. It knows all the tricks and is accustomed to tumbling about with its parents. Now, after 2 years of unbroken care and contact, its mother is telling it to leave. Until it finds its own mate, the young eagle will wander from territory to territory, sneaking a meal here and there. The final stages of courtship are approaching. Usually battler eagles spend 8 or more hours on the wing each day. Now the pair returns more frequently to perch in the trees close to their hill. This display by the female, very rarely witnessed, is her signal that nesting must soon begin. The battler's old nest is in a tree at the base of the hill. But it will need some attention before becoming the center of their lives for the next few months. The hard work begins. Battlers are designed to fly. Gathering sticks is another matter. At last, the male shows some interest in rebuilding the nest. The female carries the first stick, an important step in the breeding cycle. The male watches every move she makes. An eagle's nest is not just a pile of sticks. It's an intricate structure that must contain the chick while supporting both its parents and withstanding all kinds of weather. The sticks are carefully positioned to interlock with the whole structure. The birds work on the nest for an hour or so each morning, bringing in 4 or 5 sticks each. Low-level flight is not easy for an eagle at the best of times. The added weight and drag of a large stick makes it much more difficult. He must turn and approach the nest upwind for a successful landing. Both birds collect sticks, but in the first few weeks they avoid each other at the nest. The male does not move onto the nest until the female leaves. Rebuilding goes on for several more days. Suddenly, there's an abrupt change in their behavior. Cued perhaps by hormones, the male lingers when the female arrives. The female is becoming broody. It's the male alone that brings in the last few sticks. The female uses her body to shake the nest, and both birds work together to finish it. It's been a full 6 weeks since they began work, a long time to repair a nest. But no matter how important nest building may be, most of each day still must be spent in the air, hunting and expelling intruders. The last stick is in place. Now the nest is almost ready. When the male begins to gather fresh leaves for the nest lining, it's a sure sign that the single egg will be laid within a few days. The baboons of the park sleep at the top of the hill. Each morning, they work their way down to the plains. Each morning, they pass the battlers. The baboons move on. They haven't noticed the female sitting on her egg. Battlers spot their prey from a great height. This time it's a chameleon. They feed principally on birds, small mammals, and reptiles. The battler is a small eagle by African standards, and therefore likely to be robbed of its meal. So the male feeds hurriedly. This tawny eagle is too late. The female sits until her mate comes to take over. While one bird is on the nest, the other is in the air, repelling intruders. As the male returns to the nest, he's harassed by a raven, which would take the egg if given the chance. The female leaves as the male drops out of the sun. The raven follows him in, but not very far. When it rains, there are no thermals to carry eagles aloft. The battlers are virtually grounded. The breeding pattern of the battlers seems tuned to the seasonal availability of food. Wet weather demands more careful incubation of the egg, but it also makes life easier for all animals. After the rains, the termites emerge to start new colonies. Most never make it. The feast is shared by many. Other diners keep their distance from the eagle, who might be inclined to eat them. The sitting bird is always alert to threats. This time it's a pair of brown harrier eagles. He must stay on the nest. The patrolling female hunts within sight of the nest, but will not return until she has fed, except to drive off intruders. One bird may be away from the nest for as long as 24 hours, but the other can sleep, knowing there's a guard on duty above. Most animals passing below the nest are unaware of it. The impalas have nothing to fear, but the banded mongooses would be very alarmed if they knew of the menace above. The eagle shows little interest. The reappearance of the baboons, however, is cause for real concern. The male would like to chase them away, but he must stay with the egg. Instead of passing by as usual, the baboons are moving right under the tree. The female flies into a tree on the hill. She makes no effort to help her mate, although obviously aware something is wrong. The baboons have climbed the tree to feed on seed pods, but they're also known to drive battlers from their nests to steal the egg. The eagle keeps turning to face the baboons as they circle the nest. They're trying to get him off. Unsuccessful in their attempts to dislodge the eagle, at last the baboons go back to eating seed pods. The male showed remarkable courage, but if the larger baboons had joined in, the outcome could have been very different. Strangely, the female made no attempt to attack the baboons. She merely stayed on the tree nearby, calling in distress. On the 52nd day, the male suddenly gets off the nest. The female immediately notices this break in routine. It's the first time the nest has been left unattended since the egg was laid. Now he flies away from the nest tree and gives the distress call. The female's response is to arrive at the nest with some green leaves. She's breaking off individual leaves. The chick must have hatched. Still agitated, the male flies over the nest. In their tree now, the male just watches. The female finds sitting in the nest no longer quite so simple. The male's primary concern now is to find food for the chick, while the female tries to figure out where to put her feet. The Marshall eagle is Africa's largest. It can kill an antelope weighing almost 70 pounds. The full crop indicates that this one has just had a very large meal. To the female battler with her newly hatched chick, the Marshall eagle, twice her size, is a formidable threat. The male is equally concerned. But the Marshal wants to rest. For the moment, he's not interested in another meal. Our male remains on the alert. There will always be larger birds of prey looking for an opportunity to steal their chick. For the next 2 weeks, it will have the constant attention of both its parents. Even when the male is far away, the keen-eyed female can see that he is carrying food. She leaves as he arrives. This is the first of more than 300 sorties the battlers will make to feed their chick. 3 times a day for 120 days, they'll bring in an assortment of small birds, rodents, reptiles, and even bats. Because it grows so fast, the development of the young eagle would be hindered or even irrevocably impaired if it were not fed regularly. The male feeds the chick with infinite care, for eaglets can choke to death easily. Half a mouse is enough to satisfy the chick at this stage. Although 3 miles from the nest, the female can still see if she is needed. This is a most difficult time for the battlers. They must feed themselves and the chick, repel intruders, and whatever happens, one of them must always be at the nest. When it comes to feeding the chick, the female is less active than her mate. He's sometimes overhead with more food before she's finished. White-capped shrikes are cooperative birds living in family groups, sharing the incubation as well as the feeding and protection of the sitting bird. During a hunting trip, the battler happens to land near their tree. He has a long way to go back to his nest. The shrikes hope he won't come back. As the chick grows, the female brings in even less food, but spends more time on guard. This time, instead of going off to hunt, she flies to another tree when the male comes in. He changes direction by deliberately stalling one wing and turning into the wind for a landing. While the male feeds the chick, the female still makes no effort to leave. At this stage, the chick is encouraged to tear at the meat, the very first lesson in its preparation for an independent existence. Too much sun might be bad for the chick, but the adults appear to need it. When it's 4 weeks old, the chick arranges the fresh nest lining itself. It's left alone between feeding visits now, though the parents always remain within sight. The eagle's territory covers about 12 square miles. During the 8 hours the birds spend on the wing each day, they may fly as much as 280 miles, but always within their territory. When they do spot something, they must get to it quickly. The female has followed her mate's descent, hoping to share his meal. The male is feeding on the remains of a hare left by some other predator. But not only the female has seen his descent. So has a tawny eagle, the battler's arch enemy. It's too heavy, and the tawnies are soon picking up the bits. More tawnies arrive. The battler tries to scare them off without success. Before long, the tawnies have taken over, and it's the battlers that are picking up the scraps. The female is first to pull out. The male is not yet ready to give up. Noisy starlings distract the eagles from their argument. At 6 weeks, feathers are replacing the chick's down coat, and the young eagle is beginning to take note of its surroundings. Its father, flying by, is recognized immediately and causes no distress. But anything approaching from below could be a threat. It raises its hackles in fear until it sees who it is. The male arrives with a Namakwa dove, which it plucks before feeding to the chick. The chick's need for liquid is supplied solely by the prey it consumes. Choking is still a real danger. The pieces must not be too large. Like its parents and all birds of prey, the chick quickly gulps down the food into its crop. From there, it gradually passes on to the stomach. The indigestible parts are regurgitated later in the form of a pellet. The male removes the pellet from the nest, and in a curious and unexplained bit of behavior, does not simply throw it away, but first pulls it apart. The chick is full, but its parent must immediately begin the search for more food. It may be hours before he finds anything. By then, the young eagle will certainly be hungry again. Adult battlers drink water regularly, usually at the same spot. "10 weeks old, and fast-growing feathers must be preened to keep them in shape and weatherproof." He's already developed the predator's impulse to seize his prey, but still needs help with tearing it apart. Eventually, the chameleon will go down in 3 or 4 large portions. Now the young eagle must have a meal this size at least 3 times a day. Growing feathers are weakened if the supply is interrupted and will break when it starts to fly. When the piece is not too big, he refuses to let the male take it back. He's growing up fast. At 3 months, the chick's wings are as long as his parents. Battlers eat almost anything that moves, including snakes. Even deadly cobras are on the menu. There's plenty on this one for the male and the chick. The female has seen his descent. As he hastily prepares to return to the chick, she dives at him menacingly. Her behavior is very strange. As he takes the rest of the snake to the chick, another male battler circles the nest. The male spreads his wings protectively over the chick until the female appears overhead. Perhaps she attacked her mate on the ground in order to alert him to the approach of the other battler. After such a large meal, there are leftovers, which must be removed before they attract unwelcome visitors. This time, the meal is a bat. Now, it's a bird. And then it's another snake. The chick is 12 weeks old. Hornbills have come to nest in the tree. Their arrival makes the chick very uneasy. They've chosen a hole just below the nest. The entrance is shaped with a paste of mashed up snails. The young eagle is suspicious of the hornbill's intentions. When the male approaches from high up, it's certain he's come far. At last, the chick is as big as his parents. As it turns out, the hornbills are merely searching for beetle grubs. Even a weaver finch gathering feathers frightens the young eagle left alone in the nest. The weaver finches collect the feathers of the dead shrike for their own nests. They know the chick can't harm them. In fact, it's the chick that's nervous. The hornbills are there every day, and eventually the young eagle learns to live with them. At 16 weeks, the eaglet finds the nest a little small. It now spends hours staring out across the plains. Finally, the urge to fly takes over. Turning into the wind, the youngster immediately finds lift and the first sense of flight. The way out of the nest is downwind, where there's no lift at all. Just a long drop. Upwind, there's plenty of lift, but too many branches in the way. It's the male, but he swoops down to another tree. He's done it. From the branch, the young eaglet can launch himself into the wind. The first flight was not a great success. He turned across the wind. Without some height, he'll never get off the ground. In the end, it's the occurrence of the old enemy that gets him airborne, downhill and downwind. Eagles must learn everything about the wind. Now he's facing the right way, but still has a lot to learn. Even perching in a tree is all a matter of learned balance. Eagles don't hold on with their talons. They perch facing the wind and balance themselves by leaning against it. On an upwind at last, unsteady but improving. After 30 weeks of hectic activity, the battler's nest is deserted again. The female hornbill is sealed in the hole. She will be fed by the male. For the next 8 weeks, their nest will be the center of activity. The young eaglet will be fed by its parents for some weeks to come. But it flies well now, balanced on the wind. Much of the battler eagle's lifestyle was unknown until Simon Trevor made this film. Now we know about the battler, and I'd like to think that the more we know about our fellow creatures, the more we know about ourselves. I'm George Page for Nature.
Nature is made possible by public television stations, your gas company, and America's gas industry, bringing natural gas through 1 million miles of underground pipelines to 160 million people, fueling factories, heating homes, and cooking meals.
Next week, we travel to Borneo to explore the highest mountain in Malaysia, a place of mystery and exotic life forms. Kinabalu, summit of Borneo, next week on Nature.